everyone, I'm Pearl, and not too long ago, I was inspired by Hanacue to draw my viewers' OCs. I thought it'd be a fun way for me to interact with my community and get through a little bit of art block, so I put out an announcement calling on you all to submit your OCs under this hashtag on Instagram. Honestly, I was expecting that maybe one or two people would submit something because I have a very limited audience, but I was proven wrong. I've gone through your submissions and I've picked out 2 OCs for me to draw today. Now, without further ado, let's get to it. Now, in my true scatterbrained fashion, I forgot to actually record like 75% of the drawing process. Because every time I would step away from my canvas, I would forget to press record when I came back. So you're going to deal with this stagnant speed paint instead. Sorry. The first OC I picked out is by Lemon Sus. I hate that I had to say that, but what I don't hate is this OC's design. Slap some animal ears on a character and I will eat it up every time. I'm always going to think that it is peak character design because I've always been a big fan of anime and manga, especially back in middle school. A lot of my first OCs had animal ears. I will probably always have a soft spot in my heart for the character design trope since it makes me feel a bit nostalgic. First things first, before I can start a new piece, I need to consult my trusty friend Pinterest for some inspiration. I went through one of my 700 boards to look for some portrait pose ideas. I tend to struggle to make portraits look interesting since there's so little of the body to pose. So during thumbnailing, I decided to focus on the expression and a prop in order to do so. I went with a mischievous expression since that's the vibe I was getting from this character. And as for a prop, a lot of portraits I saw on Pinterest incorporated a lot of flowers, so I decided to use that. Then I blew up my thumbnail pose to use as my base so I could make a more detailed sketch. I wanted to make the hair super whimsical and wild, so I ended up defining a lot of the hair strands. It was probably my favorite part of the whole sketching process, I will not lie to you. My style of shading uses a lot of warm colors, usually leaning into the red spectrum. However, this character's color palette was hard for me to work into my style because it had a lot more cool colors. I played around so much with the layer types, colors, and curve settings that it would make your head dizzy. For a while though, I did settle on the shading colors being a bit more purple in the rendering. I thought purple was a good compromise since it's in between red and blue. But after a while, I felt like the colors were not working well, specifically with the hair. I ended up deciding to change the hair to its own specific shading tones, which ended up fixing my issues with the colors. I think my favorite details about this piece is the flowing hair and her sharp nails, which add an extra cat-like touch. The second OC is by Error Creepy, and when I first saw the character, it gave me a very strong sense of nostalgia, as the design is very reminiscent of an early 2000s grunge aesthetic, and the character's clothing is very reminiscent of an OC that I would make when I was younger. And don't lie to me and say that you don't feel the same, because I know that you know that I know we all had an OC with off-shoulder shirts, crop tops, dyed hair, choker necklaces, and all that jazz. This time I actually remembered to record most of the drawing process. Emphasis on most though, because I still forgot to record the thumbnailing process. Because of the 2000s vibes I was getting, I wanted a pose that reflected that. So I went back to Pinterest to look for some inspiration. I've saved these images and then narrowed it down to this one image for reference. When thumbnailing, I want to keep the sort of moe chibi look the original style had, as I feel like that gives a little extra character, so I gave her a much rounder face and more chibi proportions. I didn't focus on making the pose and anatomy too detailed because the clothes are baggy, meaning most of the anatomy is not even going to be seen, and I would just be wasting my time. I only detailed parts of the body that would be seen, like the upper arms and hands. When making the color palette, I thought I was going to struggle to combine both red and purple, but I found it worked surprisingly well together. I think that might be because the colors are so close to each other on the color spectrum. You'll also see me switching a lot between color and black and white. This is a simple trick to make sure the color values in your piece aren't blending into each other. The way I like to check this is by adding a new layer, setting it to color, and then filling it with black. This trick helped me to also decide on adding a little extra red to the palette by painting her nails. Off topic, but does anyone else like to do makeup on their characters? It makes me feel like a professional makeup artist, or like I'm doing one of those flash dress-up games. During the rendering process, I had a really hard time with the stripes. At first, I thought I could do the colors one at a time, but I quickly got bored of that, and I'm lazy. So I decided I would shade the shirt in the gray shading colors, and then I used the selection tool to pick out the white stripes, I proceeded to alpha lock the render layer and went over everything with the white shading colors instead. I also did something similar with the dyed sections of the hair. I may be lazy, but that just means I'm able to find simple solutions and save myself a lot of time. I am not in denial. I think my favorite details are the little curls in her bangs and the bright red accents in the color palette. Since this is my first ever YouTube video, I wanted to keep it on the shorter side since I'm still figuring out my format. Thank you for sticking around this long, and if you're still interested in having your OC drawn by me, continue using the hashtag PearlDrawsMyOC on Instagram, as I check the posts there very often. But until then, watch some of my YouTube shorts as they're full of useful art information and tips. I hope to see you all in the next one. Goodbye.